about, so in the previous class, we were talking about race condition and the algorithmic solutions to solve those race conditions. So basically the race condition arise when different processes are trying to share the same memory location, and at least one of the processes trying to update that variable while others are trying to read the variable. So if there are n processes and one of them is trying to write to a memory location while others are reading from the memory location, then it is quite possible that some of the processes may read the old value before it was updated, and some of the processes may read updated value. So this kind of scenario, if these processes are cooperating to produce a result, the outcome may be different depending upon what was read by which process. So race condition arises because the data read by a process may not always be the most recent one. So changes might have occurred to the data while the process was processing this data. So outcome depends upon the sequence in which the processes are scheduled, and some of the outcomes may be incorrect and may not be desirable. So it is required to identify if a race condition occurs, and if yes, then how to ensure that the processes may be run in a proper sequence to give a correct answer. So this was an example that we discussed in the last class, that we have got account in which the current balance is 1,000 rupees, and one process is trying to withdraw 300 rupees and another process is trying to deposit 200 rupees. So naturally, when you look at update process A equal to B, at machine level instruction, basically it requires B to be loaded from memory to the CPU register, then get it changed by, and write it back to memory location corresponding to A. So basically a simple assignment is consisting of two machine instruction, and therefore it is not an atomic operation, because context switch can take place after the first instruction. That is when the memory was, when the location from memory address B was read from, read into the CPU register. So before the A could be overwritten, then other process might be scheduled. And if this process is also trying to change B, so naturally both the processes are trying to write back to A, so it might create a problem. So anyhow, so in this particular case, both the processes are reading from balance, and depending upon, so initially both the processes may read 1,000, and now depending upon the sequence of the sequence in which the instructions are scheduled, the outcome will change. So for example, if W1 and W2 are executed before D1, D2, and so if W1, W2, W3 are executed before D1, D2, D3, the outcome is 1,100. Same thing is true if all the instructions of deposit are executed before instructions of withdraw, then again the outcome will be 1,100. But if W and W2 gets executed before D1, D2, D3, and then the last instruction is W3, then withdraw is doing the last update, so naturally the amount returned would be 800. If deposit is doing the last update, and in between withdraw, and both of them are reading the old value, so the outcome would be 1,300. So as you can see that the last two outcomes are incorrect. That's what we discussed in the last class also. So now we talk about another concept. When the processes are trying to read a common variable or try to write to a common variable, that part of code is known as critical section. So we are talking about a shared resource which is being accessed by more than one process, and some of the processes are trying to modify the state of the resource. So all the instructions that are reading, gaining access to the resource would constitute the critical section. Now, to solve critical section problem, it is required that the modification to the resource should be in the atomic manner. So now process may consist of multiple critical sections. For example, here the green part shows the critical section because of a shared resource which is being accessed by process 1 and process 2 only. Blue shows a critical section corresponding to a resource shared between 1 and 3, sorry. And this is shared resource between all the three. So now the critical section problem requires when one process is trying, in its critical section, the other processes should not be in the critical section with respect to that resource. So for example, if P1 is in this area, orangish area, then P2 and P3 cannot be in these areas. Of course, P2 can be in this critical section or P3 can be in this critical section, because right now the critical section, mutual exclusive condition of the critical section is satisfied. So critical section should be mutually exclusive. Only one process should be executing its critical section. But now we have to understand that a process may consist of multiple critical section regions, where each region may be corresponding to same or different resource. So when a process is in a critical section corresponding to resource R, other processes which are also sharing the same resource should not be in the respective critical section. We'll come to this producer-consumer problem again, but right now, any solution to critical section problem should be mutually exclusive, means only one process should be in the critical section. There should not be any strict alternation. It should be that one process is executing, then the second process gets a chance, then the first process gets a chance. So processes are entering their critical section in a sequence, one after another. So that is not required. We should not have a solution which is dependent upon the strict alternation, because the problem could be that one of the process might not have started execution, or process might have terminated abnormally. So this will also hold other process for infinitely long time. Any solution should be deadlock free, and there should not be any infinite postponement. So solution could be either an algorithmic solution. Algorithms have been proposed, and these algorithms will work correctly irrespective of context switch. Then other algorithms are, and then another solution is provided by hardware instruction, in which hardware provides support for atomic instruction. And yet there could, but they are tedious to use and require people to have understanding of assembly language, and require programmers to have an understanding of how to develop, incorporate assembly language code in their own high-level code. So this would be slightly cumbersome. So operating system comes for the rescue, and operating system provides system calls and through software solutions, and the system call will be atomic. So operating system shall ensure that there is no context switch during this process. So algorithmic solution can be divided into two parts. They can be two process solutions or n process solution. A two process solution will work only for the two processes, and the solutions here are Dekker's algorithm and Peterson's algorithm. N process solution will work for n processes, and there are three algorithms in this category. Now you all have done this before, but I'll repeat it quickly for the sake of completeness. We did it in the last class also. So basically in Dekker's algorithm, we are using three variables, three shared identifiers. We found that any solution that we use by construct by using only two shared identifier doesn't work. So we are using three shared identifier. One of them is favored process, and another one is P1 wants to enter, and P2 wants to enter. So whether the process 1 wants to enter, process 2 wants to enter, and favored process. Favored process can be either 1 or 2 in the beginning. It could be any random number. It wouldn't matter. But at initialization, both P1 wants to enter and P2 wants to enter have to be false. So now, when a process wants to enter, it sets its intent to true, say that I want to enter. And then it will check whether the other process wants to enter or not. And if the other process wants to enter, it will check which one of them is the favored process. If favored process is P1, then it will momentarily set its P1 wants to enter equal to false and get into a busy wait loop. So if any context switch takes place, this will allow P2 to enter the critical section. If P2 doesn't want to enter the critical section, then naturally the favored process was not 2. So let's say initially favored process is equal to 2. So P1 wants to enter. It will find that the favored process is equal to 2. It will enter this while loop only if P2 wants to enter. So if P1 wants to enter and favored process is equal to 2, but P2 is not willing to enter the critical section, so naturally this while loop will be false and P1 will continue to the critical section. So naturally it is checking the condition after setting its own P1 wants to true equal to, P1 wants to enter equal to true. So this statement has been executed. So if any context switch takes place before this statement gets executed, then P2 might get a chance and set it wants to enter equal to true. So it is quite possible that both of them might be true, but ultimately when they are executing their while loop, favored process is having only single value and both of them are trying to read it during this time. There's no write during this time. So because both of them trying to read during this time, so naturally one of the process would be able to break the loop and continue to the critical section. And then it will set the favored process in the favor of other process. Now, because this is happening at the critical section, favored process is being modified after the critical section. So only one of the process would have got access to the critical section. So only that process will be able to modify. So when favored process is being updated, so even if a context switch takes place, this favored process will be ultimately updated and other process will have to wait, because even if this is not, even if let's look at this favored process equal to 2. So even if the context switch takes place here before it was updated, this process still cannot continue to its critical section because favored process is still 2. So ultimately when it gets updated, then only this process will get the chance. So one of the scenario is that only one of the process wants to enter, there's no problem. Then this while loop in a second while loop is completely skipped and the process will continue to the critical section. But if both the processes want to enter, then favored process will decide which process will continue to the critical section. And because this favored process is being read during this time, then only one of the process wins. And only after this process has executed its critical section, it will change the favored process. So this Decker's algorithm will remain safe and will ensure that only one process will be in the critical section. But as I said, that this will work only for 2 processes only. Can anyone tell me why Decker's algorithm will not work for multiple processes? Anyone? Can you tell me why Decker's algorithm will not work for multiple processes? Can anyone tell me? So, okay, you can use many variables storing the condition. What was making this algorithm safe was the fact that if both the processes want to enter, then the decision of which process will be continuing to the critical section is decided by favored process. And this favored process is only being read during this time. So there will not be any conflict. So there will not be any race condition here. So even if the context switch takes place, it doesn't happen. It doesn't matter. But once the process has entered the critical section, then this particular part is being modified after its critical section. Okay. Now, if there are multiple processes, then what would happen? Then actually, if it's quite possibly multiple processes want to enter the critical section, so favored process might be, it will be a number from 1 to n, isn't it? So depending upon if all the processes want to enter, only one of the process should be able to continue. So depending upon which process wants to continue, one of the process, okay. So now one of the thing that here would be that this while loop will become slightly more complex and it will become P2 wants to enter and favored process is not equal to 1 itself. P2 wants to enter and favored process is not equal to 2. P3 wants to enter and favored process is not equal to 3, and so forth. So now, let's say one of the process, let's say the favored process was right now 4. Let's say the favored process was 4. And only P1 wanted to enter. So while P1 wanted to enter, and then when it was after executing the critical section, before it could change the, sorry, this is Peterson's algorithm. I'm sorry. Let's come to the Decker's algorithm, sorry. So it is quite possible that the favored process is equal to 4. And let's say P1 wants to enter. So P1 wants to enter at this point, when the P1 is continuing to its critical section and is executing its critical section, favored process is 4. And let's say P4 wants to enter. Now, when P4 wants to enter, it finds that P1 wants to enter is still true. So it will be waiting for favored process to go in its favor. All other processes are also waiting. So now, let's say P1 wants to, so now when the favored process is being changed and the context which takes place, what happened? It should be 1. So we said that the favored process is being written after the critical section is being executed. So is it possible that multiple processes, because of the context switch, might be here in this particular position? Okay, where were we? Okay. So let's say there are multiple processes that want to enter. So first of all, when we are having multiple processes, this checking the condition itself would be changed. And favored process, the person will have to check whether the favored process is in its favor or is it in the favor of the other people. So this condition would change. And the problem in this particular scenario is that processes might be deadlocked because checking this condition itself will be broken into multiple places. So even if one of the processes change the flag, this flag may not be updated. So one of the distinct possibility would be that of the deadlock, because right now we are not checking on one variable but multiple variables. So checking whether A is true and B is true and C is true and D is true will be a problem here. And because we have to ensure that all of the flags are false, but the problem is that if you write it as an AND condition, then the problem would be that even if one of the flag becomes false, then this particular process will go ahead. So one of the things is that this particular loop itself will become complicated, and then we'll have to ensure that ensuring safety condition here might be difficult, because quite possible by the time the process starts to check, this process might have executed critical. So all the processes are setting their own flags to true, and even if one of them momentarily sets it to false, it is quite possible that this might not be registered by other processes, and the processes may keep on waiting at this while loop only. So they might be deadlocked. That is one of the possibility that could occur in the end process scenario, and there will not be anything to break the deadlock if that happens. A variation of, so we'll come back to this question again. I'll let you ponder over why this should not work for an end process solution. And one way to do is, what you can do is you can write the Decker's algorithm by using threads or processes, whatever you feel more comfortable, and then try to extend the solution for end processes and try to see what happens. Similarly, Peterson's algorithm is slightly different, in which again we are using the same scenario, but it is a simpler version of that. So here, before a process enters the critical section, it will set one condition in its favor and second condition in the favor of the other process. But when it is checking the condition for the other processes. If the other process doesn't want to enter, so this while loop will be skipped and it will go to the critical section. If the other process also wants to enter, then depending upon which process, then the deadlock condition is broken by the value of the favored process. So if P1 wanted to enter first and P2 showed it intent later, so P1 gets the chance because favored process has been set equal to 1 by this process. So naturally, this condition is broken and it will continue. So the way the condition are being done here in this particular while loop, only one of the process will continue to the critical section. Okay. Now let's come to AND process solution. So the first solution is Lampert Bakery solution. So now most of you must have gone to any Pizza Hut or any such place, or even in the banks, or even at a mobile service center. So you're required to take a coupon. So either you can print that coupon, or you can go to a machine and get a coupon, and that coupon has a number. And now, whenever the customer is being serviced, he or she will be serviced based on the number that they have been assigned. So the Lampert Bakery algorithm works in the same manner. So if n processes want to enter the critical section, so they get a ticket number. So ticket number can be in a range of 0 to n minus 1, or it could be even go more than n, depending upon what are the current ticket numbers which are assigned to a number. So whenever a process tries to access a ticket number, it will check what is the maximum of the ticket number which has been assigned to other processes, and then increment that number by 1 and assign the ticket number to itself. So ultimately, every process will get a ticket. And then so the process is also so once this process of ticket assign so naturally, if a process is trying to enter the critical section, at what point we know that this ticket assignment process is complete. So the initial phase is getting the ticket assignment. So before the ticket assignment, every process will set a variable telling whether it wants a ticket or not. And then other processes, so whenever a process wants a ticket, it will check whether the other processes want a ticket or not. And if they want a ticket, what was their ticket number? Find the maximum of that ticket number and ultimately increment it by 1 and assign it to itself. And then it says that I'm not part of the selection process. So every process indicates that it wants a ticket by setting it a variable equal to true, get a ticket, and then set that variable equal to false. So the other processes know that whether there are other processes in the ticket assignment mode or not. Once the ticket assignment mode phase is over, then we go to the next phase where the processes try to find out which the one with the least minimum ticket number should proceed to critical section. So here the processes check the ticket number of the other processes, and if the ticket number of the other process is higher than that process, the process will wait. Otherwise, it will move to the critical section. But quite possibly, two processes might have got the same ticket number, and so the tie is broken by looking at their process number. So this is how the algorithm works. So initially, the processes will use, there are two arrays, choosing and tickets. Choosing is whether they want to participate in the critical section process or not, and ticket is the ticket number which is assigned to it. So when a process wants to enter the critical section, so each process has its number. Whenever a process wants to enter a critical section, when a process wants to enter a critical section, it sets its choosing equal to 1. Then it will select the ticket number, maximum of sorry, there was some mistake. So at this point, when the process is computing tickets number, maximum ticket number, it is quite possible that two processes might get the same value of maximum. So they might get the same ticket number. And after this is over, then the processes enter the next phase. Here it is checking whether any other process is in the should be 1. Sorry, it should be 1. So if any other process is also trying to get a ticket number, please keep on waiting. So they wait till the ticket selection process is going on. So once the ticket selection process for all the processes which want to enter the critical section is over, then the processes will check whether, okay, they will check for this particular scenario. Which of the process is having the least ticket number as well as the least process number. So it is quite possible that two processes might have got the same ticket number. Here X is the process which is trying to check whether its ticket number is less than the ticket number of other processes. If it has got a higher ticket number, then it will continue in this loop. If it has got same ticket number, but its process number is greater than this, it will continue in this loop. Or if this process is in the non-critical section. So if any other process is in the, so here this condition ensures that we are going to consider only the processes which have been assigned some ticket number. So ticket number is always greater than 1, is always greater than 0. Why? Because we are incrementing the ticket number. So ticket number equal to 0 indicates that the process is not willing to enter the critical section at this point. It's in non-critical region. So only the processes which want to enter the critical section, they will be or might be in the critical section, because one of the process may be in the critical section at this time. Only those processes, ticket for those processes will be checked here. And otherwise the loop will continue. So what is happening here? Initially the processes will, so every process willing to enter the critical section will try to check whether it wants to enter the ticket selection process or not. If it is in the ticket selection process, it will find the maximum of the tickets and increment it by 1, and then it will end its critical section. Now, in this particular case, then the process will check whether there is any other process which is in the which is trying to select the ticket. If yes, it will continue in this loop. If none of the process wants to go for the ticket selection, or all the processes have got the ticket, then they will go to the next phase, where only the processes which do not want to enter the critical section will not be considered. So all the processes which want to enter the critical section, it will check whether the ticket is less than other processes or not. If yes, then it will continue to the critical section. But if it has the same ticket number as any other process, then the process with the lower identity will be given the chance. So once the critical process enters the critical section, it will set its ticket to 0 so that other processes gets a chance. That's how this algorithm works. Second algorithm which was proposed by is Szymanski algorithm. Basically, this algorithm works on the concept of a waiting room. So this waiting room has got 2 doors, one to enter the waiting room and one to exit the waiting room. So the idea is all the processes which want to enter the critical section should enter the waiting room. But now we do not want this to continue infinitely, because so ultimately whenever a process wants to enter a critical section, it will enter the waiting room, and at this time it will check whether there are other processes which are waiting to enter the waiting room or not. If there are other processes, then it will keep the door open, otherwise it will keep the door closed. So once the incoming door has been closed, then all the processes which are waiting in the waiting room, one of the process will be selected, and that process will be the process with the minimum ID. Now this process will open the closing door and go to its critical section. And now all the processes which are in the waiting room will get to the critical section one by one in the increasing order of their process identity. They will execute the critical section, and the last process will now close the outgoing gate, but will open the incoming gate so that the process can start over again. So at any time, the state of a process will be can be 0, which means the process is right now in non-critical section. Process will set this state to 1 if it wants to enter the critical section, and process which is waiting outside the incoming door, Okay. So once the process enters the door, it will try to check whether other processes are trying to enter or not, and then it will set its state to 2. And once the process has crossed the door out, it will be state 4. Let's go to the algorithm. So this is how the situation looks like. So door 1 means it is trying to enter. Door 3, state equal to 3 means it is checking whether the other processes want to enter or not through the incoming door. State 2, it is in the waiting room. State 4, it is coming out of the outdoor. So this is how the algorithm is. So initially, all the process is waiting outside this waiting room, and then it is checking for whether the it will check whether there is any process waiting for the open door. Otherwise, it will come into the waiting room itself. Then so it will wait till other processes enter and the door is closed. So once the door is closed, then the processes are in the waiting room, and then they are trying to find out the process which is having the minimum ID to continue the critical section. Now this algorithm is Eisenberg and Maguire algorithm. Today on WhatsApp group, I've sent you the paper corresponding to this algorithm, which was written by these authors. I would like you to go through this algorithm and try to explain how is it working. Okay. Okay. So we said that one of the solution is the algorithmic solution, and this algorithmic solution can be 2 process or n process. Now we are going to talk about another scenario where hardware provides a support for atomicity of a operation. So these instructions, they are instructions which are provided by the hardware, and they are executed atomically. Now, why they are different from other hardware instructions? Because they allow you to implement solution to the critical section problem, as we will see. So the single instruction, they are test and set, compare and swap, fetch and add. And then there's a pair of instruction which we have to use the pair to indicate to implement critical section scenario. So let's look at the test and set problem. What this instruction does, it reads a Boolean value from a memory location and changes it to true. But it returns the original value to the calling process. So whenever a process executes this instruction, the instruction will, the value at memory location, Boolean value stored at a memory location will be read. The value at the memory location will be set to true, and this old value will be returned back to the calling process. So now this particular instruction requires one read and one write, and hardware ensures that this takes place in an atomic manner. So it cannot be interrupted in between. Otherwise, a read instruction itself is an atomic instruction, a write instruction itself is an atomic instruction, but read and write in conjunction is not atomic. But this particular, the way the hardware executes this particular instruction, this is atomic. So what's the advantage? Let's look at that. So we can implement a lock function using this instruction very easily. So initially we are having a memory location, which we are indicating identifier for this memory location is lock. So initially lock is set to false. And what we do, what a process does in acquire lock, it will try to, okay, so it will execute test and set on this particular lock. So if lock was false, then naturally the first process that executes this acquire lock will receive a false, and for that process this while loop will not be executed, it will go to its critical section. Or it will acquire the lock. But the second process, but now the lock has been set to true, When the second process tries to execute this acquire lock, this will be in this infinite loop. And lock can be released by setting this variable back to false. So that's how the critical section solution can be implemented. So initially that lock is equal to false. Before a process enters a critical section, it will try to acquire the lock, then execute the critical section, and then release the lock. So naturally, the very first process which tries to acquire the lock will receive false and will continue to the critical section. All other processes will have to wait. Once the first process that has acquired the lock releases the lock, then other processes which are waiting, one of them will be successful. And because this instruction is atomic, only one of them will become successful, and while others will have to wait. So this is how the solution will work. The only problem with the solution is that if you extend it for multiple processes, it might lead to infinite postponement of some of the processes. But the solution will ensure that only one process is in its critical section. Some of the hardware will support compare and swap. So what compare and swap does, compare and swap reads the value from the memory location. And this old value is returned back to the calling process. But this value is updated only if this value is not equal to some expected value. So this particular instruction requires three parameters: value, expected, and new value. So the memory location which is storing value will be updated to new value if this value is not equal to expected value. In any case, the old value is returned to the calling process. So this is how we can use it for the implementation of lock. So again, lock is equal to 0. And what we are going to do, if we want to acquire a lock, we'll compare it with 0 and set it to 1. So naturally, the first process which will execute this particular instruction will be able to continue to the next instruction as if it has acquired the lock, because 0 is equal to 0. So the process will receive 0. So this while condition will be false for that process. So it can continue to next instruction. But because when this instruction is executed, lock has been set to 1. So the next process which tries to execute this instruction will be receiving true, that is 1. And because 1 is not equal to 0, it will continue to loop. So other processes will not be getting the lock. Only when the first process which has acquired the lock sets it back to 0, the other process can continue. So this is how compare and swap will work. So now compare and swap, because these values are integer, we need not be talking about only 0 and 1. These values can change so to other numbers also. So in that condition, it also requires one read and one write. But compared to, if you look at test and set, it will always require a read and write. Whereas if you look at the compare and swap, this write may not be executed all the time. If the values are same, then only the write will be executed. So other processes will not write to, so only the winning process, which is getting to the critical section, will be writing. So for that process, it will be read and write operation. But for other processes, it will be just a busy wait through reading only. Now fetch and add. Now we know that in concurrent execution, systems execution of incrementing a variable is not safe, because multiple processes might be trying to increment, and ultimately what is written to the memory is the last update. So the processes might be overwriting the result of each other, other processes. So
Ma'am, ma'am, can you repeat the previous 2 slides? When we were going through Lamport Bakery algorithm, then we saw Simnaski's algorithm. Then how suddenly this topic came was not very much clear to me.
the point is, ultimately, if you are going to implement this algorithmic solution, they can be very tedious. So if you're trying to implement it for, let's say, producer-consumer problem, or if you're trying to implement these, so you can use Peterson's algorithm there. You can use Peterson's algorithm to solve race condition in producer-consumer problem. You can use the Decker's algorithm also. But ultimately, they are very, very complicated. So if you don't implement them properly, you might actually leave a loophole in your program and it could lead to problem. So that's why hardware also allows you so hardware also has an instruction to support the same scenario. So if you want to acquire any critical section, so basically, if you look at the critical section, generally the critical section would be that you acquire some kind of lock so that other processes cannot continue. Go to the critical section and then release the lock. So this is what you need to do. So for acquiring the lock, we have to have some kind of scenario where only one of the process is able to win the scene and get the lock, and other processes will be forced to wait. So hardware provides what we call a test and set instruction, which is atomic in nature. It means it cannot be interrupted in between. The race condition was arising because the simple operations, even the atomic operation, even the operations which looked atomic at high level were not actually atomic. So even an assignment was not atomic. And as a result, the race condition could take place. So to avoid that, hardware provides what we say atomic instructions, which will be executed in one machine cycle and cannot be interrupted in between. How hardware implements it at the hardware level is not important to us right now. What is important is whether we can use it to solve the race condition. Okay? Have you understood till now?
Yes, ma'am. But can you please once navigate back to that slide where we started from this acquire lock? Was the code written there?
Yeah, I'm explaining that only. So let's say there's a condition, some of the hardware will support.
You are
I'm
on.
coming to that. I'm coming to that. Please bear with me. I'm coming to that. So first of all, understand how this instruction works. This instruction involves three operations. So test and set will actually look at one memory location. So this target is stored at a memory location. So it is reading the address of the memory location, and whatever is stored at that memory location is copied to a temporary variable. Then that memory location is set to true and old values returned. So basically it is reading a Boolean value from the memory, set it to true, but return the old value to the calling process. So if the old value was false, the process which executed this instruction will receive false. But if the old value was true, the process will receive true. Is that clear to you right now? Have you understood this instruction?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now using this instruction, we'll be creating a lock. We'll see how this instruction can be used to ensure a locking mechanism in which only one of the process will acquire the lock. So we have a memory location and we set this to false. This is the initialization. So false means the lock is available. And now the process will try to acquire the lock by executing test and set on this lock variable. Okay. But initially, because it is false, so let's say multiple processes are trying to get the lock. The very first process which will execute test and set will receive false. Why? Because the lock was false. It will receive false, but at the same time, the lock will be set to true, and this is atomic. So naturally, after the execution of this process, while condition for this process would be false, and it can continue to do next thing. So it will not be stuck into the while loop. Whereas the other processes, because the lock has been set to true now, they will be remaining in this while loop. So if you look at the way the processes are executing, only one of the process will be able to go past while loop, whereas all other will be waiting in the while loop. So it is as if only one process has acquired the lock. And the releasing lock is easy. You set lock equal to false and false lock is released. Is that okay till now? Is it okay? Have you understood this?
Yes, ma'am. But I mean, I want to look at the code, like what is written here and what you are saying are not relatable.
So the point is that if a process wants to, now if you want to enter the solution for the critical section, the code is very simple. First you acquire the lock, execute critical section, release the lock. So naturally, because every process is trying to execute it and initially lock is set to false, only one of the process will succeed in going to the critical section, whereas all other process will be looping in the while loop. Is that clear now?
Yes, ma'am, that thing is clear. But I want to just wish to see the previous two slides code, what was written there, so that I can.
Which code? That
Ma'am,
was what I was showing.
ma'am, can you navigate back to previous two slides?
This
We
is
are
where I stopped the algorithmic solution. Then I went to the hardware instruction. Then I explained the first hardware instruction, test and set. Then I said how it can be used to implement lock. Then I said how the locking and unlocking mechanism can be used for critical section implementation.
ma'am, actually to me, only one slide is visible at the moment. I think I need to rejoin.
Let me see if I have left what. Let me look at my scenario. Other people, can you see the slides?
Yes, ma'am. Now I can see this. Okay.
Is that okay?
Yes, ma'am.
This was the slide I was showing, that this is how test and set works. Then I showed that this is how the lock mechanism will work. This is how the release lock. So they actually यहाँ पे critical section नहीं आना चाहिए था. ये गलती से copy हो गया. So acquire lock is only this while loop, and release lock is just setting this lock to false. So naturally only one of the process will see initially lock is equal to false. So for the first process which executes test and set, false will be returned, and this while loop will not be while loop will it will exit the while loop. But at the same time, the lock will be set to true. So all the subsequent processes, for them, the lock will be true. They will be receiving the true, and they will remain in the while loop. So only one of the process which executes this instruction first will be able to acquire the lock. And using this lock, so you acquire the lock, execute critical section, and then release the lock. That's how the critical section would be implemented. Second, instruction, some of the processors support test and set, but the problem with the test and set is that it works only on the Boolean variables, so there is not much flexibility, and it always requires one read and one write, irrespective of. So it requires one read and one write, irrespective of the irrespective of whatever. But if you look at the compare and swap, what it does, it receives 3 parameters. It checks the current value with the expected value. If the two values match, it will update the old value, current value to new value. But at all the time, it will return the old value to the calling process. So calling process will always receive the actual value which was passed initially. But ultimately, whether this value gets updated to the new value or not depends upon the comparison of the value and the expected value. So this will also require one read, but write may or may not always be there. So write is there only if this comparison takes place, or only if this comparison is successful. So how can we use it to implement a acquire locks function? So initially the lock is set to 0. So and then we compare and swap. That will actually when the process calls compare and swap, the first process will receive 0, but at the same time will set lock to 1. So because 0 is not equal to 0, this process will come out and go to the next stage. But all other processes, because now the lock has been set to 1 and 1 is not equal to 0, so they will not update the lock, but they will receive the value 1, which is not equal to 0, and they will continue in this while loop. So I said 0 and 1, it could be any other values. So that's the flexibility here. So only the first process will update the lock. So it will require one read and one write, but all other processes will be requiring only a read. So this is how the acquire lock will work. And in release lock, it will again set value to 0. Any questions till now?
Oh, ma'am. Now it's clear.
So now you can use this mechanism to execute the critical section, and it will ensure that only one process will go to the critical section. Then we come to fetch and add. So the idea is that if two processes are trying to update a variable x by a and b, and both of them are trying to add to it, then ultimately the solution should be x equal to a plus b plus x plus a plus b. But the problem is that because both the processes might read the same value of x, so one of the process will update it to x plus a, another process will update it to x plus b, and they will write it back. So you might get this incoming incorrect outcome also. So fetch and add is a atomic instruction. So what it does is that it reads the value from the location, increment it and write it, and it is executed atomically. Again, it also requires one read and one write operation. But unlike test and set, it will work on integers. So it is flexible that way. And how do we actually implement lock using fetch and add? So we create a record, which is like a structure, and it contains two integer variables, ticket and turn. So initially, for the lock variable, both ticket and ticket and turn are set to 0. So during acquire lock, a process will increment this ticket by 1. So, okay. And this value will be returned to. So when you call fetch and add, so if you look at this, it also returns the previous value. Okay. So one of the process, okay. Okay. So initially ticket equal to 0. So the first process will get my turn equal to 0, but ticket is now incrementing to 1. So for this process, only for this process, log.turn is equal to 0. And this process will continue to the next portion, whereas all other processes will have to wait, because what they will be receiving as my turn will be equal to 1, because ticket has been incremented. Here I didn't write it correctly, but actually it will not be equal to, it will not be fetch and increment. Okay. In this particular case, the turn will be incremented by 1 so that the next process will get the chance. This is how the algorithm works. So this can be used for end process synchronization also. So once the process has completed its works, it sets the turn to 0 because the ticket has been set to 1. So another process will get the chance for which the turn was 0, turn was 1, and again it will set it to 2. So the process which get ticket number equal to 2 will get the chance, and so on. This is how fetch and add works. Now link, load, and store conditional. Basically, this is a pair of instruction, and each of this instruction is executed atomically. So what load link does, it so it will read a value from the memory to the register, and then it will actually return that value to the calling process. And what store conditional will do, it will store the new value if no store attempted after the previous load link. So it returns 1 if it succeeds and 0 if it fails. Now, problem with all other algorithms was that they were fine for uniprocessor scenario, but for multiprocessor scenario, because of the cache coherence algorithm, this could lead to a deadlock scenario. So link, load, and store conditional was actually to ensure that cache coherence mechanism will not interfere with the lock implementation. So in this particular case, the acquire lock will load a location, a link and load location to register location. Whatever is stored at location is stored in register 1, and whatever is stored in register 2 is stored back to the location. And if so initially, let's say the location is 0. So So if after this load link, none of other processes have attempted store condition, so the location has not been changed. So one of the process will become successful and write whatever is in the register to the location. And because of this store condition written by this process, only one process will read that. I think I've made some mistake here. Is it? I will check it again. I think it should be register 1. I'll check it again and I'll come back to you again. Okay. Now, ultimately, using hardware lock is difficult. Using hardware instructions to implement lock is difficult because it requires the assembly interface understanding also by the programmer. And different processors will provide different instructions. So this will also affect the portability of the solution. So if you write to develop a solution for alpha processors, then you may have to change it for ARM processor or Intel processor, so which is not desirable. So that's why operating system provides support in terms of system calls, which can be used for acquiring and releasing locks. And these systems, ultimately operating system itself will be using those hardware instructions to ensure that these operations remain atomic. So these solutions would be, but as far as the user is concerned, when user is using these solutions, he or she need not be aware of how actually operating system implemented it. So operating system cannot ensure the atomicity of an operation unless the hardware supports it. So to implement wait and signal operation of the semaphore, operating system itself will be using these instructions, which were the hardware instructions that we discussed. So software solutions are in terms of mutex, which is actually a short of mutual exclusion, semaphores, which could be busy wait or no busy wait, monitors, and barriers. So today we'll be discussing about mutex and semaphore. Let me see what's the time. Okay, I don't think I've got the time, so I will be stopping at this point and we'll be starting from here in the next class. So what you are required to do, you are required to read about link, load, and store conditional. And you are also required to read Eisenberg and Maguire algorithm by the PDF that I've sent you. And these will be the assignments for you, classwork assignment for you today. Meanwhile, I'll be posing a question on the classroom. So please answer that for the sake of the attendance. Okay, so I'll close the meeting, and if you have any question, what is the total number of slides in our syllabus? I do not understand your question, Nitin. What do you mean by total number of slides? Nitin, are you there? Nitin?
Yes, ma'am.
What do you mean by total number of slides?
Ma'am, I just wanted to estimate syllabus, how much we have completed, about 20%, 30% in that manner.
Okay, so I can tell you that we have got topics wise, I can tell you. Yeah, I say it is 9:05 because some of you might be just having some problems. So that's why I give it slightly more time. So we have got CPU resource management that we have done in terms of CPU scheduling, except for one topic, which I will cover when I talk about multi-core or multiprocessor operating system. Second one is the process management. So in the process, we have discussed what is a process, what are the different states, and so on. Okay, sorry. And you answer the question, the deadline doesn't matter here. It is just for attendance. And then third is, so we have got, so process management will be consisting of two parts. One is the processes itself, which we have already done, and then process synchronization, which we are talking about right now, critical section problem. We will be going for some classical problems, and then we'll be having, what is that, deadlock and live lock, we'll be considering them. So this will be the longer topic. Then we'll be coming to memory management, then input-output management, file management, and distributed operating system. So in terms of syllabus, I think we must be around 20% if you want to know about the coverage. So any other question?
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll change the time again, but that time is okay, doesn't matter. There is that question. Am I going too fast? Nitin, why did you ask me this question?
Ma'am, we are not getting time for other subjects. We are not getting Sundays also.
Why?
Ma'am, we are busy in solving assignments of OS, and we don't get time to revise the previous slides of OS also. Can you please consider the frequency of assignment or deadlines of assignments, please?
I don't think you are getting many assignments from other teachers. So why are you bothered?
Ma'am, we don't get time to revise.
Why do you not get time to revise?
Ma'am, the assignments are very long actually, ma'am, not exactly very long.
What assignments are very long? They are not long at all.
Ma'am, the last assignment which you gave, process scheduling, to
So?
execute it in C language, and to execute with the Gantt chart, ma'am, it was very lengthy also.
So Gantt chart need not be drawn. You could have written the values. That the process one is going from time this to time this, process two is going from time this to time this. Yes, that's how you could have represented. Are you following me?
Yes, ma'am, but even
Ma'am,
writing
actually,
that
ma'am,
code
actually,
was
ma'am, there are many
I
teachers.
do not expect this answer from, as I kept on telling. I think when you appeared in your All India examination, you were among first 5,000 or first 10,000, if I'm not wrong. Am I wrong till now?
no, ma'am.
No,
Out
ma'am.
of 10 lakh people that appeared in that examination, you were top 10,000. Am I
Ma'am,
right or am I wrong
actually,
till now?
no, ma'am, you are right.
Okay, now you answer the question now. Now you can
Ma'am,
post the question.
actually, as per our syllabus, our classes are till 1 p.m. and
I know that.
then we are free. But ma'am, there are many teachers who have shifted their classes and take extra classes, and it kept on shifting till 5 p.m. So if we are busy till 5 p.m., then how we will do our other jobs and study other subjects and do assignments? And
See,
there is
that I'm not aware of. This is what you have telling me for the first time. So in any
Yes,
case,
ma'am,
if the
this is-
class gets shifted, then you are free from in the morning hours, correct? See, I'm not aware of your schedule. I will go by the schedule which has been given to me by the department. And as far as that schedule is concerned, your classes are over by 1 o'clock. Then I expect you to have lunch. I expect you to watch TV. I expect you to play, and accordingly, I'm giving you the assignment. And I know that when I'm giving online assignment, most of you actually cooperate among yourself and you're actually copying one another's data. That's why I'm giving you more assignments, so that even if you work in groups, at least you will get to do one assignment at least. Please, Sonal.
Ma'am, like in the last week, there were teachers were busy in the admission of PhD students, so they took our classes on.
That was only one day,
in-
na? That was only one
No,
day.
no, ma'am, for 3 days actually, 3 to 4
See,
days
Sonal,
actually.
that is not an excuse that will work with me. I've given you my answer, and my answer is that when I give assignment online, I find that students just make groups and then copy the assignments. So my idea is that even if you're working in a group of, let's say, 5 students, and if I give you 4 assignments, so at least you'll have to work on at least 1 assignment. Are you with me now?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
So please don't give me that you are busy and all that, because all of you are not honest. You are not doing your assignment yourself. You are actually taking help of each other. You are copying the assignments from internet. I know that very well. But I'm not penalizing it for you, but because the only thing that I can do is I can give you more assignment than the group numbers. That is the only way to keep you work on at least 1 assignment. That's all. And one thing could be there, which was the objection that I wanted to hear from someone, which you didn't raise, was that, madam, you do not send us your presentation just after the class. I do not do it on purpose, because I want you to think about what I told you. I want you to listen to what I'm telling you, so that at least you don't rely on my slides. You go to other resources and try to read more. That's my only idea. And this is what I have covered till now. If I look at the real assignment, programming assignment that I gave you was the CPU assignment only. Till now you were just running something or just. So I do not still understand where the problem is. Because that is part of your lab. That is a separate course. That is 2 credit course. This is not part of the OS assignment. That is part of OS lab assignment. So basically you are dealing with 2 different courses that you have to understand. There is 3 hours OS lab in your timetable also. That assignment was for that. So any programming assignment will go to that scenario. So this is the only semester where you will be working hard. After that, it will be like placement scenario, and you will not actually go for any studies. And if you look at the next 2 semesters, they are more or less electives and open electives. So I think this is if you really want a good placement, you should really work hard in this particular semester. And what I'm repeating right now is mostly from what you did in the concurrent programming. I might be rephrasing it differently. That's all. I could have very well skipped this complete topic and said, okay, ठीक है, आप लोग concurrent programming से कर लीजिएगा. But I don't want to do that. So this is a repeat of what you have done earlier. So I think you can do it. But anyhow, I don't want to keep you waiting long because you have another class. So please, any questions, you can raise it on WhatsApp. But please don't ask for deadline extension, please. Quickly, yes.
Ma'am, like the coursework assignment that was given, ma'am, it was a very lengthy assignment. We
Which
had to
one was
draw.
lengthy assignment?
Ma'am, like the coursework assignment, ma'am, in which we had to draw the Gantt chart, process Gantt chart, and CPU Gantt chart, and IO Gantt chart. Then also calculate the average for average waiting time and all.
You're talking about coursework assignment or lab assignment?
Ma'am, coursework assignment.
हाँ, तो उसमें कितना time लग गया?
So, ma'am, we were given like 2 days for 2 assignments, and ma'am, for each question there were 6 parts. So, ma'am, a total of 18 parts.
बच्चों जैसी बातें मत करो प्लीज. क्या नाम है आपका? कौन बोल रहा है अभी? मैं अब तुमको कहूंगी कि जब तुम अपनी कोचिंग कर रहे थे तो कितनी असाइनमेंट्स तुम्हें मिलते थे? कभी तुमने कंप्लेंट किया? हाउ मेनी असाइनमेंट्स, फिजिक्स, केमिस्ट्री, मैथ्स, कितने असाइनमेंट मिलते थे? बता दो मुझे. डेली शीट और वीकेंड शीट और कितने असाइनमेंट होते थे? बताओ जरा मुझे अब तो. स्पीक.
Yes, ma'am, there were assignment there also.
हाँ, कितने थे ना? कितने थे?
They were given weekly in my coaching. So.
हाँ, तो वीकली में कितने देते थे वो? 2 क्वेश्चन, 3 क्वेश्चन या 50 क्वेश्चन, 100 क्वेश्चन?
They were MCQ questions, around 20 questions in each subject, like.
डेली और एक वीक में? मत बताओ मुझे ये, ठीक है ना? I have also had experience of coaching classes, so please don't give me that. You were doing much more than that. Every day I think you were solving about 50 mathematics questions or combined 50 from mathematics and physics. You were doing that. Don't give me that. Anyhow, so you will be having anyhow, so all of you'll have to work hard, and I know you can work hard. So I don't want any complaints of this kind कि coursework ज़्यादा था, coursework कम था. As I told you my reason why I'm asking you to do more, because I'm not expecting you to be completely honest. If you are completely honest and if you all pledge कि हाँ मैडम मैं अपने आप कर रहा हूँ, तो I will reduce the coursework. Otherwise coursework will continue to at this pace. या तो आप लिख के दीजिए कि हाँ ये मेरा अपना काम है, मैंने किसी का कॉपी नहीं किया है, और अगर मैंने कॉपी किया हो तो मुझे इस कोर्स में फेल कर दिया जाए. Give me that kind of undertaking and then I'll go ahead. If you're not taking help from anyone, if you're not taking help from any resource, doing it yourself, okay, I'll give you more time. But if you're not doing that, then I think this is fine. We'll continue it at this place. Any questions now? Okay, I've got other assignment, so I'll be closing and we'll meet again tomorrow.